Harvard President Claudine Gay will keep her job. That's the decision that came unanimously from the Harvard Corporation, one of the university's top governing boards. It met on Monday to decide Gay's fate after her controversial comments during a hearing about anti-Semitism on campus. Now, in a statement, the corporation says, quote, "We today reaffirm our support for President Gay's continued leadership of Harvard University. Calls for genocide are despicable and contrary to fundamental human values. President Gay has apologized for how she handled her congressional testimony and has committed to redoubling the university's fight against anti-Semitism. But many of the university's top donors are furious, threatening to pull millions of dollars in donations. So how will this decision affect the university and perhaps others? I'm joined now by GBH News Managing Editor for Higher Education, Kirk Carapezza. Kirk, thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be here, Crystal.
Busy day.
It was.
Yeah,
it was.
And was this decision, I guess, predictable?
I think it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought the corporation would stand with President Gay and reaffirm their confidence in her in this, as they said in the statement, in this tumultuous and difficult moment. They basically said she is the right person for this job at this time. At the same time, they did acknowledge she made some mistakes, right, including her initial reaction to the October 7th Hamas attacks against Israel and her kind of elusive answers before Congress last week when she was asked those hypothetical questions about the genocide of Jewish people. She did apologize, and she, said words matter. And this morning, the corporation, announced it's, going to reject any calls for her removal. Some people I talked to were hoping that there would be a change, that they think that in this moment, Harvard and other colleges needed someone to be more direct and more forthright the first time, and that we couldn't keep having these, kind of back and forth, backlash to the backlash moments.
And this was significant as well because UPenn's president stepped down after all this.
Right. And she, she was facing existing challenges, and there was donor revolt there as well. You had a chorus of voices for her, calling for her resignation, including the board of advisors at Wharton School, the business school there. I also think her video message, she apologized after the fact, and I don't think that helped her. It looked like she was kind of reading from a teleprompter at that moment, and it wasn't necessarily coming from the heart. And I think that's the overarching takeaway this semester, is that, whether it's the hearing or the initial comments and statements, was that people are, in this moment, people want moral clarity, and they want the leaders to be direct and to the point. And we didn't hear that this semester.
Now, before all that, right after the congressional testimony, we talked about how schools across the country are struggling with what to say and what to do in this moment.
Right. And I mean, I talked to a lot of college leaders about the hearings last week, and, some were devastated, right? I mean, many people see what happened last week on Capitol Hill as a farce, right? That this was just political theater. But I spoke with Lynn Pasquarella. She's the former president of Mount Holyoke College here in Massachusetts, and now she's the head of the Association of Colleges and Universities. And she told me, it may be theater, but it's theater that we need to pay serious attention to, right? Because this moment is being used, according to these higher ed leaders, they think that this moment is being used as a way to kind of attack higher education and kind of dismantle it from its perch. And if you listen to that hearing, if you watch the full 5 hours, I mean, they weren't just talking about anti-Semitism, right? A lot of other things came up, DEI efforts. And this week, before the corporation made its decision, more than 700 faculty members signed this petition calling on the corporation to resist these calls to oust President Gay. And, I spoke with one of the professors this morning, and she basically said she was delighted that the corporation stood firm and independent and that the university is still autonomous.
What role do you think the fact that this is, Claudine Gay is brand new in this role.
Right.
She also is a historic figure for Harvard. What do you think that those factors sort of played in her favor?
Oh, yes. I mean, in her favor and against her favor. I mean, if you're online, some of the vitriol against her and some of the claims are pretty outlandish. But I think context here does matter. I mean, she took over in July, right, in the days and weeks right after the Supreme Court ruled against race-conscious admissions at Harvard and many other colleges. She's the second woman to lead the university. She's, the daughter of Haitian immigrants. She's the first black person to lead Harvard. And, she took over at this tumultuous time. And it's been a trying and long semester, right? I mean, she's kind of learning by fire here, right? I mean, Larry Summers, Larry Bacow, I don't think any of these, Drew Faust, I don't think any of the former Harvard presidents faced a controversy quite like this. But yeah, I think that's, her race and gender. And even watching the hearing last week, you had 3 women there speaking. It was a moment, right? I mean, they're still underrepresented among higher education leadership, but you had 3 women. The issue when you talk to some people is that they were all new to the role, right? So they were listening to their advisors and listening to, PR professionals and lawyers. And I think that's why some of their answers came off sounding so elusive and, legalese, where one observer told me if Larry Bacow had been up there, he was the son of Holocaust survivors, longtime college president. He was at Tufts, then he was on the corporation, and then he was the president at Harvard, that his answer might have been different, that he might have come out more, and unequivocally said, yes, calling for the genocide of any people violates our code of conduct. And maybe this issue would have not gone away, but the fire would have been tampered a bit.
One of the other things, and, Charlotte Young and others have written about, one of the things that folks were talking about is if you start letting donors call the shots. Right. And in this case, in UPenn, $100 million was mentioned as part of being at stake there. Who knows, millions of dollars of funding from donors here in Harvard. If you start letting the donors, call the shots, it becomes a really dangerous situation. Yeah,
it does. I mean, and it's at the same time, you need a poetry department, right? You need to keep the lights on, right? You need a poetry department. You need a philosophy department, right? I don't think the poetry department at Harvard's bringing in all the tuition dollars, right? So these schools are reliant on donors, but it becomes a tricky situation when they're trying to defend, free speech, but also leave this, leave space safe enough. People have always said, higher education should make you, should allow you to be uncomfortable, right? Speech, you should be uncomfortable. Yeah, but money talks, and I think we saw it at Penn, right? But for now, MIT and Harvard have resisted this. Dr. Sally Kornbluth at MIT also got the backing of the governing board there last week. I mean, Harvard's got enough money. I think they can turn down some donors, right? I mean, the endowment, they're doing okay. I think it's second only to the Vatican.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, most schools, your average college couldn't withstand this kind of pressure.
Right. And I'm also thoughtful of, does this then send a message loud and clear to other presidents of universities where they might be getting with their PR teams, their comms departments, and being like, maybe we need to come out with a clear statement?
I think so. Yeah, clear statement, or, again, we've talked about the Chicago principles, right? The idea that schools don't necessarily need to feel obligated to comment on every single thing that happens.
That's right.
Granted, this is a large international issue. The protests are, popping up on their campuses. They're kind of forced to talk. But I think we might, I talked to some PR professionals. They say only talk if it aligns with your mission, if it affects your mission, right? Or if you feel compelled to speak. The idea of just continuing to issue these statements, no matter what the story is, whether it's, the October 7th attack or the murder of George Floyd or Black Lives Matter, this idea of just issuing a boilerplate statement, they kind of lose their oomph, right? And then you're just criticized for not being fast enough, not being forceful enough. But if you as an individual feel compelled to speak, go for it. Speak your mind. And I think if the college presidents had done that, in this case, they might not have found themselves in such hot water.
And I know, I've heard other university presidents, I think it was the Wesleyan president that said...
Michael Roth, a huge advocate of free speech.
Yeah, and he said the president of any university shouldn't matter. It's about the campus and the people and the faculty.
Right. And his answer was yes. The answer to that question should have just been yes.
Yeah.
But they were so lawyered up, I think, and they were as you said, they were sticking to their talking points. And when they did that, they weren't connected. They might have been answering the right legal question, but they weren't speaking to the American people in this moment at a time when so many people are losing faith in colleges and universities. I mean, there's surveys out there that show, majority of Americans think that colleges are having a negative effect on the future of this country. And I think this week, didn't help that situation. This made higher education look out of touch. And I talked to Lynn Pasquarella, again, the former president of Mount Holyoke, and she said they were kind of set up to look like symbols of elitism, right? And they were kind of speaking in a way that people don't talk to each other, and they came off sounding like they were up in their ivory towers.
Well, certainly a lot to unpack and see what happens in the future. Kirk Carapezza, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Crystal.
Again.
Good to be here.
All right.